So, Brij, take me back
No.
to the series of moments that led to your trigger moment to begin your journey with us at RNT.
So for me, I think it was a culmination of a couple of things. First of all, it was really a personal challenge for me. I knew I'd always been severely overweight. Um, I had an illness once that, you know, uh, doctors all suspected that it was going to do with my weight. Um, and it turned out in the end it wasn't, touch wood, but what kind of transpired is it kind of triggered me. It's like, right, um, you better do something about this, right? It's kind of just climbing over and over again. There's once I stepped on the scale and I was like, shit, no, that can't really be right. And it was kind of like a year before I had my son, which kind of meant that, yeah, I need to look after myself a little bit more. Um, but it wasn't really like a one thing. It wasn't like I need to do this. I need to make some changes. It was a bunch of little things that kind of kept me up. But then in the end, ultimately, it was more of a personal challenge thing, right? And every time I think back as to why I wanted to do this and why I have been doing this, it's more to push myself because yes, I've got a goal in mind. I know what I want to do, but ultimately, I'll only do it if I really want to do it, not if someone else tells me. If a doctor told me tomorrow, it's like you need to lose weight or you need to do this, I'll be like, I'll do it, right? I'll get around to it, but ultimately, and I think that this is important for a lot of people, it's that they want to have to do this themselves.
Mm.
And for me, that's kind of what it was, which was when I finally got my mind to it, that this is what I want to do. I'll find the right solution. I tried a few things, right? I started exercising a little bit more. I was, swimming regularly. Never really looked at everything holistically that I kind of do now with you guys. But so before it was kind of like swimming regularly. I play sports. I play squash and all of that when I could. But now I guess where I am now is I'm looking at everything from being active more throughout the day, um, uh, training as much as I can, nutrition very important, but looking at all of those things and I think when I also looked at the program that you guys had, on the website and when I was started doing research, I think just giving you step by step things that you have to do to kind of achieve your goals. That kind of just clicked for me. It was like, right, this is something that I can get on board with. It's something that I will adhere to, and I'll make sure that I'll make it work for me because I believe in this kind of stuff. Give me a checklist, I'll do it, and
Yeah.
and that's what it was. Yeah, it was really that.
I'm gonna probe though and
Yeah, yeah, of
say
course.
what was really there? Like, how did you feel when you looked at yourself in the mirror?
Um, I wasn't very happy in terms of the way that I kind of saw myself, but I think when I look at other people and other things, I never really cared what people thought of me. It was
Mm.
more about what I thought about myself. Um, and it wasn't really what I looked like in the mirror um, that kind of, I guess, triggered me. It was more what I felt like, what I could do, what I couldn't do, right? Like, I mean, like if I look now, right, I can go off, I can play squash for an hour, no issues, right? Before, okay, when I was younger, I'd do the same, but before I started, I'd probably be 20 minutes and I'd be completely out of it. I would be, like a walk, I probably wouldn't walk for more than 25 minutes or half an hour. And now I'd carry on for 2 hours if I wanted to, right? If the podcast I'm listening to is good, I'd keep going. So I think those kinds of things were more. were more kind of like what triggered me as to what I can do, what I couldn't do. Obviously, there's the things like, going clothes shopping. I didn't really do that, but stuff like that doesn't really affect me, right? But it was more like, right, what is it that I can physically do? I sit down and run around with my kid. I'd get tired after a little while, right? And I knew that all of that was coming. At that time, he couldn't run around, he couldn't walk, right? He was less than a year old. But I knew that what I'm doing now, I wouldn't be able to have done then. So I think there's this big appreciation of now what I'm able to do. I know that I wouldn't have been able to do back then. So reflecting back on on kind of where I was is very different to to what I thought I'd be able to even do or achieve, and things like that, really.
Are there any more sort of day-to-day examples of things that you just think, I just couldn't do that?
Yeah, so I think the main stuff is, like, I'm outside the physical stuff is the way that I'm like organizing everything I'm doing, right? So it's some of the other areas that it's impacted me. So things like planning what I'm eating, right, and spending a lot less time on things like that. So meal prep and all of that. I feel like I'm getting more time to myself, and I think it's more planning my days around whether it's training steps or whatever that might be, right? But I think my own priority has changed, right? Before I used to prioritize everything else before I prioritized myself, and I wouldn't have even thought about that beforehand, so if I look at day to day, right, regularly, walking about 10K a day and 10 kilometers a day, quite, without any issues, even if it's, bang on midnight, I'd still go out for a walk, snowing, rain, or whatever it is. It didn't really matter before. I didn't even bother doing that. So day to day, a lot of that has helped, but mentally, which is the impact that I didn't even think about back then. So mentally, I feel like, I guess a little bit of clarity, right? And a lot more calmer than I used to be, right? Before, my mind used to just constantly be spinning wheels and all of that all the time, with work, with home, and all of that all the time. And I guess now it's a lot more different. I have time to think about what I'm going to do that day or the day after or whatever it's going to be. A lot more time to pause, reflect, and things like that.
What do you think drove you to gaining as much weight as you did? Because I believe you came to us at 162 kilos.
Yeah, that's right. And it's a combination of different things. First and foremost, it wasn't always a lack of not being active. So I think, overall, apart from, I wasn't training like I kind of do now. I had a different understanding of training, right? But I'd be playing sports, or I used to play squash and all that sort of stuff when I was younger. I used to do a lot of hiking and all that, when I was younger. But overall, it's kind of like lack of understanding rather, of things like nutrition, right? Which was kind of like a big thing. And then also just, not even focusing on myself for a very, very long time. If I think about, I never really gave a shit about what I ate. I never really prioritized anything, doing anything physical, in terms of, whether, even if it was, if I had to pop down to the shops, I'd get into the car and pop down to the shops, right? And right now, it'd be different. I'd just walk down, whatever it might be. So it was a combination of, me spending a lot of time at my desk, working and, be working a lot, especially, in the evenings, eating at random times of the day, right? Never had any structure to my day. And, over a long period of time, it just keeps adding up, and you just keep going on and on.
Why do you think you didn't really care about what you ate? You didn't really care about prioritize yourself? And what years did the weight sort of really pile on?
I think so. The years it really piled on was probably in the last 8 to 10 years. So I've, as a kid, I was always, the big kid in school, right? But I guess I never cared, I guess, at that time, because it never stopped me from doing anything, right? I never really, I never kind of saw like a limitation. Okay, yeah, I didn't fit into the best clothes all the time, or, but anything that I really wanted to do, whether it be I go karting with my friends, or if I go, play squash, or whatever it might be, it never really stopped me from doing anything like that. And I think that kind of, there was this kind of level of satisfaction where I was like, right, I'm at a place where I can still do everything I want. But then I guess over the last 8 to 10 years, maybe, or so, especially, settling into this job, coming out of university, starting to work, right, where, in university you're still active, you're walking around everywhere, you're not in one place the whole time. And when I started working, it was very different. You go to one place, you're there for 8 to 10 hours, 12 hours a day, whatever it might be, and you're in one place, and by the time you get home, it's dinner and sleep, pretty much, right? And then if you go out for drinks, you go out at the weekend, and that was kind of like, right, that's it, that's all I'm doing, right? And even the little physical activities and stuff I used to do before, that all kind of went out as well. It wasn't stuff that I used to do much. So that's when it really started, I guess, piling on. And I think I got something like 40 or 50 kilos, over that period of time. From the point I left university till I started.
What were you doing to sort of almost hide it, or to kind of put it at the back of your mind? Because if you gain that much weight, you have to change your clothes, right? You have to do certain things. Like, but what were you doing to like think, okay, well, it's okay. I don't need to do anything about it. What was going through your mind?
I think it was always, like I said, I was probably justifying myself. It's not stopping me from doing anything, right? I'll buy new clothes. I can go out, buy new clothes, right? It's all available for me.
Yeah.
Right. I will do. I know that if I went for a swim, I'd be able to swim. If I want to do anything, I will be able to do it. But then there's a difference between I will be able to do it and actually then going out to do it, right? And the actual going to like, I will go out and do it, that's happened less and less over time, right? Is that, when I was younger, I'd be doing those things quite regularly, and then over time it kind of went, a lot less and less of, so it just didn't happen. And I think it did get to a point where I was like, right, went down to the pool and did 40 laps, and I was wiped out, and I was like, wow, I could do this when I was younger a lot easily. It was a lot easier when I was doing it before. So I think it was less about kind of hiding it, and more like I'm kind of like my own personality is, I'm very introverted, in terms of, I look inside myself for energy, right? So if I want to do something, I will do it, right? Rather than outside factors really affecting me in terms of, you need to do this, right? If someone said, you've got to lose weight, I'd be like, I'd laugh it off, right? And I use like a sense of humor, I guess, as a coping mechanism, if you will, right? And eventually, kind of, I'd keep doing that. It doesn't help me in the end, and I had to really look inside myself and say, right, this is what this is what you want. Find the best way that you can do it, and and try and figure out how you're going to actually do it.
Where do you think that comes from? The coping mechanisms, or was it like, yeah, where do you think it comes from?
I think that's kind of difficult to say. It's I guess it's always been like my personality.
Yeah.
I've always been, with group of friends, I've always been the big guy in the group of friends, right? We joke about things, and you know, it was just, yeah. I think it was more. It's just more how I've always been, right? I've been, that chilled out guy who doesn't really care about much, get stuff done when I need to get stuff done. But on the other side, yeah, I don't let things get to me at all. And I think I've always been like that. There are a lot of people who are always trying to, who are a lot more extroverted in terms of this is kind of like, they need a lot of the outside energy to kind of push themselves to do something. Whereas me, I never really cared about any of that so much. I'm more about, what is it from inside myself that I really need to do. And I think that's what kind of really drove me at the end and said, right, I need to do this. No one, doctor can tell me, but in the end, that's all they can do. It's from me, from my inside me. I need to say that, right, this is what I need to do.
Well, what's your family like? Your parents and their body composition and health?
So they're, I guess they've become a lot more healthy than they used to be. So hopefully part of that is me inspiring, inspiring them, and it's making a lot of the changes. But no, they are overweight, right? So they do weigh more than average, but I've always been like the heaviest in the family, right? But look at my brother and sister; they're not. They're normal sized people, but I've always been the overweight one. So in terms of, I guess in terms of family, yes, there is kind of like the growing up, right? You never really, and in an Indian household, there's not a lot of understanding in terms of, nutrition, food, and all of that. There are things that are good for you, things that aren't necessarily good for you. But then growing up in a vegetarian household, that was always also difficult. Everything was very carb heavy all the time, and now I look back on it and I understand that, So yeah, in terms of family, yeah, they are heavier, but I think they've always still been a little bit healthier than I have been.
Yeah. Interesting. So when you decided that enough was enough and you wanted to make a change, you started to notice you couldn't do things, and you probably didn't have whilst you didn't have like a oh damn moment, it was a sort of series of build up. How did you find sort of starting the process? Because you had an incredible journey in 2021 in particular, where I just love that picture of you at your son's first birthday.
Yeah.
It's fun, your son's birthday, and then your son at your second birthday.
Yeah.
And the cake, not only are you remarkably different in how you look, but the cake's smaller. The cake's gone from massive to tiny as well. I thought it was just an amazing picture. But that's a journey in itself. So talk us through how you found getting started. How did you find sort of changing behaviors that were starting to become ingrained for 10 years plus?
So in that, I think that's probably the first few weeks before I was getting started. It was kind of like, right, shit, this is actually happening, and this is going to get scary now, right? So my son's first birthday was literally, the party that we had was the day before I was supposed to kick off, right? And I turned to my wife and I was like, right, that's the last piece of cake that I'm going to have for a long, long time. Make sure that one's worth it, because yeah, it's not going to happen. I mean, it wasn't a big piece of cake or anything, but it was just mentally it was challenging, right? Because it went straight away from, you know, from things like not really caring about anything in terms of, you know, what I'd eat, not eat, whatever's on the table, to then mentally, physically preparing for the meals, right? And training, again, training was something new I had to fit in regularly into my daily routine. I think walking, and walking regularly, and walking's been the biggest game changer for me, right? Both physically and mentally. Um, but you know, to finding time to walk and all of that sort of stuff, all of that's kind of like, right, how do I fit all of this in around what I do regularly? So the first few weeks were quite challenging to do that. I mean, you know, nutrition was probably the easiest thing, right? Because obviously I got a plan from you guys saying, right, this is, you know, this is how you're going to meet your nutrition target. This is what you're going to eat. This is what you know, how much water you're going to drink and all of that sort of stuff. That was easy, because doing meal prep, still do it now, right? 2 and a bit years on, and all literally I do is make a whole bunch of stuff on Sunday, freeze whatever I'm making. It's all portioned out, frozen, and then take out my meals as I eat them. The only, you know, I make a couple of fresh meals a day, but like my dinner every night, still frozen. And that decision fatigue and all of that just went away straight away, which was, on one hand, it was like, right, that's actually really easy. That's made my life a lot easier. Temptations in terms of, you know, going out to drink, or, you know, all of that was more mentally. I just set myself a barrier that, right, we're not doing this so much anymore. We're not doing it at all, especially in the first couple of weeks, first couple of months, and it turned out pretty much the whole year, right? But so all that social pressure also went away, which you know, was a blessing in disguise for me. So that was kind of like, I think the nutrition part was the easy part, right? Restaurants were closed as well, right? That was amazing. And when they opened up again, that became challenging again. But then when it came to things like training and you know, and the physical aspect, that was a little bit more challenging to get into, to find the time of day where it suits me to train. And you know, I tried so many different times, you know, when does it work for me? And eventually kind of got into, you know, the 6 a.m., right? I got to a point where, before I personally had COVID, yeah, I was training at 6 a.m. And just before I had COVID, it was almost six times a week. So that was the big shift for me, right? But in the end, it was also finding time to walk and all of that sort of stuff, because at that time, right, trying to get 10,000 steps in, I was a lot slower at walking than I am now, right? Right now, I mean, I track every time I go out for a walk, so I know where I am compared to, you know, just daily, right? At that time, my usual walk used to probably take me an hour and 20 minutes, which now kind of takes me less than about 50 to 55 minutes, right? So I'm more than half an hour, you know, half an hour quicker than I used to be. That same, you know, 5 and a bit kilometer walk that I do. So it was stuff like that. So it's like, right, how do I track? How do I fit all of this into, you know, into my day? But also, what is it that I can do around my working day, right? So walk to the station, walk back instead of take the car to the station, and all those kinds of things. And eventually and then COVID hit, and COVID, so that whole of 2020 was like, so the picture you're talking about was between first and second birthday. So that was pretty much COVID year, yeah, 2020. And I think I just got into a good place with training, and suddenly it just went completely, the training went out the window for a bit, because I you know, I found it difficult to train at home. For me, it was like, when I went to the gym, it was like the space to train and all of that, and training at home became a lot more difficult. And then I put a lot more emphasis on, you know, trying to do a bit of training at home, but then making sure that I hit all the other targets that I wanted to, step counts, nutrition, and all of that. And but on the plus side, because I was saving almost 2.5 hours a day, not commuting into London, right? I could use that time a lot better.
Yeah.
And I still do now, because I still don't travel in. I still work from home now. So I kind of, whereas before I was working, I was training and everything around work. Now I kind of do it the other way around, where where I have time blocked out in my schedule, my diary daily, which is, if you're arranging a call with me at this point, I will be out. I won't be at home. I'll be on the phone. I won't be at a computer or a desk doing anything. So now it's kind of the other way around, where my work schedule is changed around so that I prioritize the other parts of the day.
How did your friends, family, and social circles react to this journey? Especially, you said you're always known as the big guy in the group. Assuming you were the guy to go to restaurants with, have beers with. How do they see what you were doing? What did they react?
I think they were all very happy for me generally, right? Obviously, when we'd be down at the pub and I'd be having a Diet Coke or water or whatever that might be, as opposed to, the 6 or 10 beers that I normally have, right? They were a little bit shocked, but generally they were supportive. And I think one of the biggest shocks that my dad had was when I was measuring out my food portions at the start, and he'd be like, "You're eating that much, and you think you're going to lose weight, right?" Because the first set of portions, they generally looked massive, and I was like, "Right, I don't know how I'm going to finish it, but I'm going to force myself and convince that this kind of the right thing to do." But making sure that I'm eating everything. So it's kind of like, but then after a while, and the kilo started going down, right? Then they're like, right, everyone's generally very supportive. I think the biggest shock came to a couple of my friends, because obviously during lockdown, we didn't even see each other that much. And it was a long period of time between, March, when everything went into lockdown, and then a couple of months later, I think at that point I was almost like 30 kilos down, and suddenly they're like, wow. And be generally very supportive in terms of, what I'm doing and things like that. Still, I wouldn't go out. I think just generally my lifestyle changed a lot in terms of, I don't necessarily go out so much afterwards, right? Is a combination of a couple of things. Is that, with my kid, right? So with the little one, I started going out less and less, and then with a lot of these lifestyle changes and everything, it became less and less as well. Not to say that I still don't enjoy going out, but it just, the frequency reduced, right? Before it was kind of like every Friday and Saturday I'd be out. Now it's like, once a month I might pop out for a bit. But
how have you found the identity shift of this whole experience?
So if I think about like, okay, so where my identity was versus where I am now. So yeah, I'd be that person who's, going out regularly and all of that. Whereas now it's, my friends call me up, or my cousin calls me up, and like, when are we going to go out and play squash? When are we going out to play badminton? Are you, should we go out for a walk today? Should we go training? Are you going to join me in training? That's where I think there's been a shift, right? So my a cousin of mine, he's also on a similar journey, right? He's also he's got a lot of weight to lose, and he's doing really well, and was and started a couple of months ago. But he's also, we've noticed like a big change in terms of what we're doing and what we're prioritizing. And I think that's where the biggest change for us has been. Instead of us going out in the evening to do, to restaurants, to bars, and all of that. We're like, right, when are we training together? And that's kind of where our priority has become.
Yeah. And have you found it managing a young child, long hours of the at work, and also just such a serious lifestyle shift? How have you found balancing the three together?
That has always been a challenge.
Yeah.
And Ivan will tell you that. And the amount of times I've complained about my little one's come into our bedroom, and he's been doing that for the last month and a half, which is he comes into our bedroom at 5 o'clock in the morning, or sometimes 2 o'clock, and all of that, and getting ill at all times of the day. So I think there are a whole bunch of positive aspects to the lifestyle change, where I mentioned decision fatigue and stuff earlier on, right? That's taken a lot of stuff out. What I'm going to eat. I kind of put that same thing for the days I'm looking after the little one, right? So there are certain days of the week where my wife's still at work, and I'm looking after him, and I know what he's going to eat, and all that sort of stuff. But it's like it has been really tough managing that, making sure that I still wake up, in the morning with energy to do whatever I need to do. Um, I've used a bunch of that to, um, I think, to spend more time with him, which has been great, right? When he was younger, before he could walk, I'd be like, right, I'm taking you out. You're going on the buggy, and we're going on a walk, right? So I'd be pushing that thing around for 5 or 6 kilometers, whatever that might be. So in that sense, it's we're spending a lot more time together. But you know, doing everything, training with the little one and all of that, it's been tough. It's definitely not easy, but I've managed to find ways to making sure that I can still do everything. The only time when it's a challenge is like, right, I need to get an early night in so that I've got, I can do it all again tomorrow. So like right now we're kind of going through this phase all over again, which is, he comes into our bedroom 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and we think, yeah, this is the last time he's going to do that, but he does that in the morning again. So it's, I think it's just a balancing act, right? Is just like you kind of just have to deal with it, and you're going to be drained for a few weeks, but it's just temporary. In terms of work, there's tomorrow to do work, and the day after, there's days where a lot will happen, where you need to just keep your head down, and it's going to be a challenge to do everything. And there are other days which I've got freer time, and I've literally got Wednesday afternoons booked out for squash, and Thursday evenings booked out for badminton, and mornings for walking and for training. So there are things that I have done, like proactively, to block out time to do these things, and making sure I plan my day around it. The kid is a joker, he's a wild card, right? You have to be ready at his beck and call whenever he needs, but work is easier to manage. Yeah, things always blow up, but you can work around that, right? If you're not going to do something tomorrow, you can make up. Sorry, if you're not going to do something today, you can make up for it, in the evening or tomorrow. So,
what would you say have been some of the overall biggest challenges and obstacles on a personal note as you've gone through this process of dropping so much weight?
I think the biggest challenges have always been, so personally, especially of recent, was actually catching COVID and trying to get back from it. Before I had it, I was in such a good flow, and everything was just going along. So that was a challenge, and I'm still kind of on my way to getting fully back to where I was, 6-7 months ago. So that's one part. Second part is nutrition, right? The temptation's always out there. I think, for me, it's always been, I guess it's always been a challenge, right? Less so now. Now I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm eating, and I know what will work and what won't work. But it's still a challenge. And then getting your mindset for training to push when you're training and to make sure that you're doing it regularly. It's a lot of that has been difficult to kind of um, not to get my head around, not to like push myself to actually do it, but then to do it right, right, is to make sure, like, when I was training, to making sure that I'm tracking everything I'm doing. Because I got to a point where, I think right at the start you suggested the Strong app, which was really great for tracking training and tracking what I'm doing. But it's making sure that you're doing that all the time, tracking what you're eating and so on. That's always been the challenge, I think, for me.
How do you find battling the temptation factor? Because that's the hardest thing of keeping the weight off, right? It's that old habits, the old behaviors, the old identity, the old triggers. What goes through your mind when previous temptations kick in?
So I think for like food and snacking and all of that, it's trying to then figure out about why I'm doing it, right?
Yeah.
I went through a phase as to where I was doing it again. And I was like, and then I really had to look back and it was like, why am I doing this? And it was really a couple of things. I was bored, right? As in, what I was working on at the time was boring, and I just needed to, find some way to make that entertaining, right? Another thing was stress, right? I don't normally stress out about anything, or I'm generally that calm person. But when things do get stressful, I get fidgety, and I try and find something else to do, and whether it's food. And what I eventually did was, I'd go outside, right? And so these are some of those things that I did, like especially with stress, right? It was I'd go outside, I'd think about things, I'd go out and walk for 15 minutes or whatever it is. But that was one of the ways to kind of alleviate that. But I think on the other side, when it got to, like, if I'm bored, right, then I really had to try and find ways to make make whatever I'm doing entertaining. Because sometimes everyone gets stuck with like a mundane task that they need to do now and then, like admin work, whatever it might be. And yeah, I think it's more telling yourself, right, don't do that. Because I don't think anything else really would work in that kind of thing, because the temptation for me, the kitchen's right there, right? So it's easy to walk out. And then funny one was, I fill up my glass with water all the time, right? I drink, I now, find I'm drinking a lot of water, and when I'm full on water, I don't really want to eat anything else. So that one was, I found that one quite funny, but yeah.
Just playing, it's constantly having that battle with yourself until it becomes a normality, right?
Yeah, and sometimes it'd be like, well, it's okay, I'll have a snack, right? But I think there is a difference between what I used to do and what I do now. Is that before, it'd be subconsciously, and you don't even know, what you're eating or how many calories are in that or anything like that. And I think that's the big difference, that me before versus now. Is now anytime I do go and get a snack, I have memory or log it or whatever it is on the app, on the was it MyFitnessPal app, right? It's tracking food and stuff. Yeah, that's 70 calories less than you're going to eat out of your main meals and whatever it is. or that 70 extra calories you've eaten today, and things like that. So I think now if I do that, it's more consciously, which for me then eventually becomes like, right, you're not going to do that because either that's too much or yeah, you're losing control again, if you will.
Yeah. So you went on this journey of losing 50 kilos.
Yeah.
Tell me how's the physical been the vehicle for you?
Um, I've heard this in so many ways, so many of the podcasts and everything. I think for me, it's always been me being able to do a lot more than I can. For me, it's not been fully physical. It's been so mental, right? The actual mental, a lot of clarity that I've had, a lot of the decisions I make have all been like, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing for myself? For me, and the big change has been is prioritizing myself over over everything else, and not just me physically, but me mentally as well. And I think that's been a big driver and big change in me over the last a year or 2 years or whatever that's been. It's a big change, but I think I'm in a much better space mentally than I was before. Physically, yes, of course, right? But I think it's also taken a step up mentally.
For those who might be listening and sort of resonating with the idea of never putting themselves first, what advice would you give?
I think it's important to look after yourself, because the better you do, it reflects that on the people around you, right? So like my kid goes to me, or he's when he tells my mom where's dad gone in the morning, he's gone to the gym or he's gone for a walk or whatever it might be. So it's that whatever impression that you're whatever you're prioritizing, if you're doing the right thing, the people around you it'll help them prioritize that as well, because they know that you believe them, especially if they're people who are dependent on you, right? So like my son one day hopefully might look up to me and he'd be like, right, well, what was dad doing? And he was prioritizing some of these things, which I hope he does as well. So I think from that side, that's if you prioritize a lot of these things for yourself, hopefully the people who depend on you would prioritize them for you as well. But then you get to look after them a lot more.
Amazing. Would you say your son is your biggest driver right now?
Yeah. Him and the family as well,
Course,
and
yeah.
like my wife and everything as well. So I wouldn't be able to run around the kitchen like I do before, because now he makes me do that. So there's definitely an aspect. I take him swimming and I do all that sort of stuff with him, and hopefully when I was 15, 16 years old, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. Hopefully I can do that with him when he's 15 years old as well.
If you were speaking to someone who's at the starting line right now and they're about to embark on their journey, what's the best piece of advice you give them to set them up for success?
I think it's believe in yourself, right? Make sure this is something that no one can tell you want to do, right? You have to be able to do it yourself. This was the biggest thing for me, is everyone in the world told me, yeah, you should do this, but until I was ready to do this, I wouldn't have done it. So take the journey full on, right? You're definitely going to hit challenges. You're going to find things hard, but if you're going to if you're going to go, do it with everything you got. You're not going to hit every target every week, right? But try and do it, right? The thing is that there's no real time limit. I've learned this, right? There's no real time limit. I want to make sure I get there, and the process is incremental. I obviously you know that there's your 12-week plans or whatever, and I'm sure I could have gone on that and just done everything for 12 weeks, but then I would have gone back to where I was a few months later. That's not what you want. You're trying to make lifestyle changes. It takes time, and yeah, just kind of believe in the process, and yeah, and work hard at it. And good luck to whoever's doing it.
What almost kept you from joining or starting this journey?
I think it was a lot of self-reservation, whether I'd be able to do it for that long, right? Obviously, I knew nutrition is going to be challenging, right? I love food. I love going out. I love eating different food and all that sort of stuff. So I knew that if that's going to be a challenge, then that will definitely be one of the hardest challenges. And that was kind of like, I don't want to say sacrifice because that's not the right word for it, but that was kind of like, right, that's one of the things that you're not going to have to give up. There's going to be a time and place for that, but at least for the short term, right, just work on the plan, do whatever it is you need to do. But I think for me, when I made my mind up that I'm doing this, I was like, right, I'm going to do it. There's a funny thing that happened a week before I started, which was we were planning to do a massive renovation and everything at home, and I was just emptying out cupboards and stuff, and it was the week before I was due to start. I took out all my old clothes and I literally just put them to one side. I started throwing them away. I was like, I'm not going to need them when I move back because I'm not going to fit into any of them. So it was that mindset where I'm going to do this, and I think when I made my mind up, I was like, there was nothing really going to stop me from doing it.
I love it. Burn the boats.
Yeah.
What's next for Brij?
Well, my journey is not over, right? It's ongoing. I think I've just set the foundation. Where I am now is starting place for a lot of people, right? So I've got a long way to go, and I'm just going to be at it. That is really at that. I don't think there's next. It's just life's going on. It's just a different type of life now.
Love it. But listen, it's been incredible sharing the journey. I've loved watching your transformation so far, and like you said, this is a work in progress, and it's been cool to speak on it at this stage of the journey. Sort of reflect on the first 50 kilos, and see where we are after the next 30 to 50, depending on how far you want to push it.
There's no stopping. Yeah, there's no stopping.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for sharing your story, Brij.
No worries. Thanks for having me.